Today on Trial Watch, Marie Hilley murdered her first husband, poisoned her daughter, and faked her own death. Did she get away with it?
Christine Kraft endured one of the nastiest discrimination cases in history.
It's no fun to be known as the world's ugliest anchorwoman.
Plus, this Texas grandmother took on the mob when she refused an offer from the Godfather.
The whole bunch of them were so dangerous that people wouldn't even be seen with me.
All this and more today on Trial Watch. Real people, real trials. Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Weller. And with me, co-anchor and attorney Lisa Specht.
Hello. Welcome to Trial Watch.
Well, police call her the Black Widow Killer, and she keeps escaping from their web. Marie Hilley poisoned her husband and daughter for the insurance money. But convicting her and holding her are two very different things. You see, Marie Hilley has the unusual gift of convincing people she's someone else, even someone who never existed. To her friends and family, Marie Hilley was living the life she'd always dreamed of. She'd married her high school sweetheart and raised two beautiful children. But underneath the tranquil surface of this loving wife and mother stirred the heart of a cold-blooded killer.
Her husband died in 1975, and his death was diagnosed as due to hepatitis. 4 years later, her daughter became sick, and she became sicker and sicker over a period of 5 or 6 months when it was discovered that her sickness was due not to some mysterious disease, but to arsenic poisoning. Marie Hilley then was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband, whose body was then exhumed, and with the attempted murder of her daughter.
A new autopsy of Frank Hilley found enough arsenic to kill him several times over. Police believe Marie murdered him for $30,000 in life insurance. She stood to get another $25,000 when her daughter died. Marie Hilley was dubbed the Black Widow, but before she could be brought to trial, she was released on bail and vanished.
We know now that she went to Florida, and after several months met a man named John Homan, and they became lovers, and after several months of seeing each other, decided to move to New Hampshire to start a new life.
The couple packed up, with Homan unaware his new bride was wanted for murdering her first husband. And it didn't take long in the cold northern winters for Marie to get bored. So she planned an elaborate escape by inventing a phony twin sister.
Marie created her new identity as Terry Martin with just a few careful moves. The first thing, of course, was to anticipate that she might need the identity of Terry Martin, and she started having phone conversations that she said were with her sister Terry Martin.
When it came time to leave, Marie told her husband another lie. She said she had a fatal blood disease and was going to Texas to visit her sister who would take care of her. What she really did was go to Florida for a few months. She dyed her hair and lost 25 pounds. Marie then called her second husband, identified herself as Terry, the fictional sister, and told him his wife, Marie, had died. Adding another strange twist, Marie returned to New Hampshire as Terry Martin, and incredibly, John Homan fell for the hoax. But some of her co-workers didn't and turned her into the police. They went to the book press in Brattleboro, Vermont, where Marie worked, and waited for her. They walked up to her and said they had reason to believe she wasn't who she said she was.
She said, "You're right. I'm tired. I'm tired of running, and I'm not Robbie Homan." And she told them her real name.
The police were shocked to discover who this fugitive really was, the notorious Black Widow. Marie was sent back to Alabama to stand trial, and it didn't take long to convict her of murdering her husband and trying to murder her daughter. Even though there was overwhelming evidence of her guilt, Marie's second husband, John, remained loyal and continued to profess his love for her.
Even after he found out that she had pulled this hoax on him, said, "I love her. She was nothing but good to me. She was always good to me, and I have nothing but love for her."
Marie was sentenced to life in prison, but because of good behavior, she was let out on a weekend pass a few years later. And what do you think happened? Marie vanished once again.
She was discovered 4 days later, crawling around, incoherent, almost frozen to death, on the porch of a house in the little village outside of Anniston, where she had been born and grown up as a child.
Well, the police say Marie Hilley died of exposure shortly after she was found. But the people who know her aren't so sure. After all, they say this wouldn't be the first time that she has faked her own death. And Lisa, I think this is a very smart woman. I think she's still out there.
I don't believe it, but if it's true, we'll probably have a follow-up on Trial Watch.
That's right. She'd have new charges, wouldn't she?
Absolutely.
This story could go on forever.
It could be the longest-running story on Trial Watch. Well, next on Trial Watch, her boss fired her, claiming she was too old, too ugly, and wouldn't play up to men. And the judges agreed with her boss. It was the most bitter sex discrimination battle in recent history. Christine Kraft was fired from her TV anchor job because she wasn't pretty enough and because she wouldn't kowtow to men. Now, Christine tells Trial Watch how her brutal firing and long legal struggle changed her life for the better.
It's no fun to be known as the world's ugliest anchorwoman.
That vicious slander has plagued Christine Kraft for nearly a decade, ever since she was fired from her job as the anchorwoman at KMBC TV.
The 6 o'clock report with Christine Kraft.
I'm Edward Lewis.
And I'm Christine Kraft.
Christine was hired by the Kansas City station with the promise that she wouldn't be asked to change either her hair or her makeup.
And I said, well, let me tell you, first of all, I'm 36 years old. I have lines, bags, wrinkles. I've seen too much California sun. I am not, I've had a foot operation. I don't wear high heels. If you want someone who's bandbox perfect from tip to toe, I'm not the person to hire.
But the station did hire her. Then her male bosses quickly demanded Christine change everything. The station, owned by the giant Metro Media Company, even required that she allow a local department store to select her wardrobe. Then, a few months later, KMBC demoted her to a reporter's job. Her boss told her the reasons why.
People of Kansas City thought I was too old, too unattractive, and didn't defer to men.
Christine Kraft is a fighter, so she fought back. She sued her bosses. First for fraud, because she'd been promised she wouldn't have to dress and act in a certain way, and then for sex discrimination, because the same standards didn't apply to the male anchors. The jury agreed with Christine and awarded her $500,000.
Well, we were thrilled when the jury came back with unanimous verdicts for us on the sex discrimination and fraud aspects of the trial. It was a great, great moment.
But in a one-page order, the judge found no sex discrimination and reversed the jury's decision. Christine sued again, and again a jury found Metro Media guilty of fraud and sex discrimination. This time, they awarded her $325,000.
Because the people knew who was lying and they knew who was telling the truth. That was by far the greatest victory the second time around.
Metro Media appealed, and this time an all-male appeals court reversed the jury's decision.
I never saw a penny. I never saw 1 cent. But that's what happens when your jury verdicts get thrown out by the appellate courts. And people still to this day think that I won some huge amount of money. And they say, how's the real estate? And it's pretty funny. But it was still worth it, even though there was no monetary award.
Now 45 years old, Christine Kraft hasn't given up the fight for equal justice, and soon she'll be fighting in the front lines. She's in law school, and when she's done, she's going to handle civil rights cases.
The law school I've experienced so far has made me, I don't want to say more intelligent, but certainly given me a new source of information from which to pull in my understanding of the way the world works. It's a profession. We see it as a genuine one, whereas in television news it's not a profession because there's no tenure for anyone. You see, in law, no one's going to ever kick you out of the courtroom because you weren't pretty enough.
To put herself through law school, Christine is back earning her living as a broadcaster, only this time on the radio.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Christine Kraft. This is KFBK. It's 2:07 in the afternoon.
That's quite a story. That is quite a story. I want to come back to Christine just a second, but first I've got to ask you, how can a jury give a ruling to the court and then be overruled by the judge? How can that happen?
Well, it's interesting. I think for lay people, it's an interesting question because people assume that the jury verdict is sacrosanct unless it's appealed. In fact, juries are sometimes wrong, and that's why our system has a safeguard. And the safeguard says if a judge thinks a jury has made a decision for the wrong reasons, not based on the evidence, then that judge can take it away from the jury.
What does someone like Christine Kraft in this situation have to do to prove that she's worthy of some sort of an award?
Well, it's a different standard than it is in a criminal case, for example. A criminal case is a standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. This is not quite so difficult a standard. It's basically a preponderance of the evidence, but she does have to meet that burden of proof.
Christine Kraft, boy, that was a big, big case. All of us in the media watched it very, very closely. Well, just ahead on Trial Watch, Ann Blackwell did all the things women aren't supposed to do. She started her own construction company. She stood up to the mob, and she strapped on a gun to fight for what's hers. Well, it happened just the way it does in the movies. Ann Blackwell starts her own successful business. The mob demands a piece of it. The Godfather makes her an offer she isn't supposed to refuse. And then this Texas grandmother rewrites the script.
Construction is not just male-dominated. It's a very traditionally macho field. It's the kind of business where everybody still refers to the women in their office as the girls.
Ann Blackwell is one in a million. This divorced mother of two from Nederland, Texas, started her own construction company and quickly turned it into a multi-million-dollar empire. She did it with brains, honesty, a keen business sense, and a potent stubborn streak, one which eventually saved her life. Ann had just been awarded a $5 million construction project by the Louisiana Department of Energy when local mob thugs decided she'd been an independent operator long enough. The construction union demanded that Ann rent their equipment. She refused. That's when union boss Willard Carlock sent his henchman, Mike Shamimi, to viciously sabotage the equipment owned by Ann's company.
Somebody said to me one day, "Don't you know when you come to Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, you rent your equipment from Willard Carlock?" I couldn't believe it. It was the most incredible thing I'd ever heard of.
These people were just getting unruly over there. They were making threats on her life.
I was damn well determined. I had my own equipment. I didn't need theirs. I wasn't going to rent it from them.
But I was afraid for her. Her being the type of person she was, she said, no. She said, I'll come over here to do this job and I'm going to finish it.
He said, "You have to remember something." And I said, "Yeah, I know. Get the job done." He said, "No. Stay alive."
Ann caved into their threats and agreed to rent equipment from Carlock and Shamimi. But the union wasn't satisfied. Shamimi insisted she fire her job superintendent, James Smith.
Shamimi came up behind me. He said, "No, you understand, lady. You either get rid of Smith or we will. We'll kill him."
Again, Ann grudgingly gave in to their demands, this time to save Smith's life. But her ordeal still wasn't over. Carlock now wanted Ann for himself.
He told me that if I'd spend the weekend with him, we could talk about ways to reduce the equipment and the manpower on the job. I wanted to spit in his face, but I couldn't. I just stood up and looked at him and said, "Forget it."
Ann pleaded with the union to investigate Carlock and Shamimi. Her pleas were ignored. Instead of an investigation, Ann got a one-way ride to see a man known only as the Godfather. His warning sent chills up her spine. Keep quiet, for the next investigation would be the one looking into her death.
Every night she'd call me from a phone that she felt wasn't tapped. And she would always end our conversations with, "Remember this, if I wind up dead, it wasn't suicide."
After Ann's menacing visit with the Godfather, she did just what the average person would do. Ran home, locked all the doors and windows, and sat up all night paralyzed with fear.
However, Ann Blackwell isn't the average person, and we're going to tell you what she did next when Trial Watch returns. The Godfather wanted a piece of Ann Blackwell's construction business, and if she kept refusing, she'd put her life in danger.
Ann was terrified, but then she got angry, and despite fears for her children's safety as well as her own, she hit back hard by testifying in front of a U.S. Senate corruption hearing.
And that day I finally realized maybe I knew more than I thought. Maybe I wasn't aware of what I knew, but if I was a threat to someone that big, as powerful as the Godfather, I must know something.
Despite the warnings, Ann found the courage to go to the authorities. She testified before a Senate racketeering committee. She named names. Her bravery ended with indictments against Carlock, his son, and Shamimi. But the danger wasn't over. She had to testify against them.
There had been several witnesses that had come forward prior to this time that were later found dead. One in particular was found shot twice through the heart, yet every time this happened, it was ruled a suicide by the local authorities.
Ann risked her life, but in the end, she got the result she so desperately wanted.
As the verdict was read over and over, I heard guilty. I guess about the 10th one, I realized tears were running down my face.
All three men went to jail. Willard Carlock Sr. was sentenced to 12 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. Mike Shamimi was sentenced to 8 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Willard Carlock Jr. also got 8 years and a $10,000 fine. Yet, the battle isn't over for Ann Blackwell. Even with the Godfather and his henchmen in prison, she still gets threatening phone calls. But Ann says she'll always fight for what's right. She tells us, "I never felt I had another choice." Now we're going to test your understanding of the law. Every day, Lisa will give you the facts of a thorny legal case. Then you be the judge and match your decision with the courts.
Imagine this one. You and your lover have just finished a romantic lunch at your favorite hideaway, and now you're strolling hand in hand past the shop windows in New York City. Your private moment is shattered when a TV news crew approaches you, says they've already taped you, and now they'd like an interview. Problem is, you and your lover are married to other people. So you ask the crew to destroy the tape, and they refuse, saying they're going to broadcast it anyway, without your interview, even without your consent. What a story.
Hey, now wait a minute. Can they do that? Isn't that invasion of privacy?
That's the issue.
Aha. Well, you decide. Then Lisa's going to tell you what a New York judge actually decided when Trial Watch returns.
So, are the private moments of our secret lovers truly private? Or can a news crew simply tape anybody it wants to and broadcast it to the whole world, including the lovers' spouses? The court rejected the couple's claim of invasion of privacy. Judge said the subject of romance is a legitimate news topic, and being filmed in a public place is the price we pay for enjoying a free press.
So is the court saying that if you're outside, tough luck?
Well, actually, it's not so much being outside. The distinction really is, are you in a public place? If you're outside and you're in your backyard, then you probably do have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But outside in New York on Fifth Avenue, holding hands, probably something else.
All right, how about the question of celebrities? Do they have different rules that apply to them?
They really do. Courts look at celebrities and say, look, these people voluntarily thrust themselves into the public eye, so a different standard applies entirely.
All right, now everyone in our final story today knew that they were being taped and shown on TV. Dorothy Bauke converted to Judaism before marrying Gerald Sims. When the couple divorced, she returned to Catholicism. But when she took their 2 daughters to church, Gerald took her to court.
My beliefs through the Catholic faith are that I was not Jewish at the time the children were born, and if the mother is not Jewish, the children are not Jewish.
I think it's fully appropriate for the Bokes to say grace if it incorporates Christianity or Catholicism into their theological being. I would object to that.
A centuries-old religious dispute. This time, the battlefield was a Denver, Colorado courtroom. As part of their divorce settlement, Dorothy got physical custody and Gerald got religious custody. He wants the children to remain Jewish. She wants them to go to church with her.
I believe in my faith. My faith is extremely strong to me. I very much want to share that with the children. I want them to be part of my life.
Gerald claims that Dorothy's desires violated the spirit of the custody order, and that unless she adheres to the agreement, she should be charged with contempt.
Is it your intent to continue to take these children to church, even if the court finds you in contempt?
I'm just trying to live my way of life, and my life has Christianity in it, and I live in a Christian home.
Gerald's lawyer argued that Dorothy was clearly and willfully in contempt. He said that jail time was the only thing that might change her mind.
I think if she goes to jail, maybe she'll think twice about telling this court what she's told him by her action, and that is, I don't care, I'll do it my way.
Dorothy was found guilty of contempt and sentenced to 10 days in prison. The judge then suspended the sentence, so Dorothy won't be going to jail. She did say she intends to appeal. But in the meantime, will the children be going to church?
I have to follow the court order right now.
And the court order allows her to take the girls to church only twice a year, on Christmas and Easter Sunday. If she takes them to church at any other time, she could be looking at a jail sentence, Lisa.
Okay, well, that's it for us today.
Join us again tomorrow for Trial Watch. Real people, real trials.